I am in the Backus Digital Media Content Kitchen. It's been 30 days since we put in the brisket and the tallow dip chuck. Really excited to do this ground beef experiment, see how it's all gonna turn out. I wanna check loss, I wanna check quality on these two cuts. So we're gonna go through that whole process and see what ends up happening. I'm gonna try and record weights and things of that nature, and then I'm gonna grind it all up and turn it into ground beef. So this will be pretty exciting. All right, first the brisket. Oh my goodness, look at this. All right. So this brisket, when we started out, was about 27 pounds. I did cut off about 4.81 pounds off the end because it's just gonna dry out into nothing. So why waste it? So we technically have a 22.19 pound piece of beef, but I'm gonna see if my scale will go this high. And weighing this, and it will. Okay, so 19 pounds, 12 ounces. On that. That doesn't include, obviously, what we're gonna lose from trimming. We'll need some fat, but a lot of this fat's gonna get cleaned off, obviously, from the dry age process. There's the bottom side of it. So good coverage, obviously, from the fat to protect us. Let's see how much usable meat we actually get out of this. All right, here we have it. Trim brisket. That was not fun to break down, to be completely honest. I mean, here's all the outside excess fat you normally take off a brisket on there. So let's weigh this, see what we get out from a weight standpoint. Make sure it's not hitting the cutting board here. 13 pounds, 2 ounces. You know, let's just throw this up here. Make it easy on myself. Trying to keep this flap from. Yeah, 13 pounds, 5 ounces. It's our leftover weight. And that's down from 19 pounds, 12 ounces. So, you know, almost 6.5 pounds of just trim out of it. And there may be more that we're gonna have to take out, you know, as I break this down. Again, it's going into ground beef. So it's gonna get chunked up, cubed up, ran through the grinder, but if there's big chunks, excess fat, we'll have to take that off as well. For now, we're gonna throw this back in, pull out the chuck, get that chuck cleaned up from all the tallow that was all over it. And then we can start to break these down into smaller pieces and get it ran through the grinder. All right, here's that tallow dipped chuck roast. So again, obviously we wanted to do that 3/4 pellicle, or 3/4 tallow, to leave one side so we could still get moisture evaporation, so we can actually still have the process of dry aging happening. That was the goal with this one. So I got to clean off all this tallow and then just trim off that bottom, maybe some on the top, but it should be minimal. Pretty excited, so let's just see where it's at now. 8:13. And let's get this cleaned off. All right, we've got our chuck roast cleaned up, got the bottom pellicle taken off, took off as much of that fat as we could from the tallow dipping, the 3/4. Again, it allowed it to evaporate some moisture so we truly get dry aging flavors on this. Weight on that, 7 pounds, 4 ounces. So pretty good on maximizing. We've only lost, let's see, we started at 813. Not a ton, a little over a pound. So to me, I'd say that's a win on the 3/4 tallow dip. From the flavor standpoint, it should have developed. It's a great fatty cut that we've gotten. So the next steps are to break this and the brisket down into manageable pieces. I'm gonna throw it real quick in the blast chiller. If anyone knows anything about grinding meats, you want your meat super cold. Makes it a lot easier in the grinder to break down. And then I got to get set up for that as well. When we come back, have this all cubed up, ready to go, and ready to be ground up. So before I cube this up, I did want to show what the inside looked, and you can see how good the marbling is on that, which again allows that dry age process to happen. But you only get that with good, high quality beef. You know, if you're in select choice, you're not going to have that marbling that you need for the dry aging process to actually happen properly. But looks really good from the inside. So again, cut these down, throw them in the blast chiller, and we can get them ground up. Our beef is chilling down so we can get ready to grind it. I do think it's really important to show that we had another about 3 pounds, 8 ounces of just fat that we had to kind of trim off of that brisket in order to make it usable for ground beef. I mean, I kept a lot of fat on as much as I could, and then all of this is actually good because we already trimmed off the pellicle stuff. So this could actually be rendered down into tallow, which is what we'll do with this to get even more, so that way it's not thrown away. All right, we have all of our beef ready to go, chilled down, parts chilled, ready to start grinding. I'm gonna do the chuck first, and then I'm gonna do the brisket, and then we'll combine, you know, with the combination and the ratios that we're really trying to look for. All right, we got ground chuck. Because I have the larger die blade on, what I'm gonna do is grind up the brisket, and then what I'll do is run it back through with the smaller grind so everything gets a double grind, so all the fat and actual muscle gets mixed up really well. Time for the brisket. Here's our brisket. Let's get it ground up. There we have our ground brisket. I'm gonna throw this back into the blast chiller, get the temperature down, bring back out the chuck, and we will go down a die size and get this even smaller. Okay, all said and done. We have our ground chuck, and you can tell how dark it is, not as much fat. And then we have our brisket. See how light it is? Just tons of fat. So what we'll be doing is combining to do a 70-30 blend. So 70-30, but I want to get total final weights of each of these proteins. So I'm going to weigh those out, write them down, and then we'll be making some burgers. All right, ground chuck, 6.5 pounds. And on our ground brisket, right at 10 pounds. So that's with any loss from it just being around, you know, just bits and bobs as I was doing it, you know. So if you really break it down, you know, from this experiment, you know, our start weight on our brisket was 22.19 pounds. We ended up with 10 pounds. So we have over a 50% loss. Now, depending on how much fat if you add that back into, because there was that 3.5 pounds of fat from the brisket that could be turned into tallow, you'd probably have a little better loss than that 50%. And then on the chuck, we actually had really good results. We started with 8 pounds, 13 ounces. And then our usable product was at 6 pounds, 8 ounces. So, you know, just a couple pounds of loss there, which is great. Now, the next step will be to combine these two to make burgers. All right, I'm actually going to combine these two together. We're just going to do a 1 pound test mashup together. So I need 11.2 ounces of chuck and 4.8 ounces of our brisket. So let's get this measured out. So 11.2, 4.8, get us up to a pound. And again, this is for a 70-30 burger. Again, you could cut back if you want to do an 80-20, but you know, I think burgers should be nice and juicy. All right, so we've got an even blend of what we wanted. Mix those together. And again, on a commercial scale, you'd probably be, you know, taking those cuts and running them through the grinder together so they kind of grind better. But because I don't have that, I'm just going to hand mix it together. And then now I can form these into some nice patties and eat them. Stay tuned for that video.